Okay. All right. So to kind of demonstrate the ultimate flexibility with this, let's say we wanted to make a decision at runtime, and let's say at some point, PayPal has come along to support the CBB validation strategy. How do we pass one of many of these algorithms into the payment processor at runtime? Well, the simple way to do that is to go into our payment processor and create a setter method here. And we'll call this set validation strategy. And what we're going to pass in is an IE strategy validate implementation. And whatever gets passed into here, we're going to assign to the instance variable iValidate. So it'll be this dot iValidate is equal to iValidation strategy implementation. So just that one change gives us an ability to make a decision after these classes have been constructed. Even if they get constructed with their default behavior, we can do something like payment processor dot set validation strategy, and now we have the ability to set whatever strategy that we want. So in case, again, if PayPal has come along and been able to support CBB, we can just simply go and do like new strategy validate CBB implementation. And with that, we are demonstrating our ability to support at runtime a validation method or strategy. So if I use the API again and set the type to equal credit, this is using the CBB algorithm. If I go to PayPal, remember PayPal is defaulting to no implementation, but because we're changing at a runtime, now PayPal will use the CBB algorithm. So that is an example of the flexible nature of the strategy design pattern and how we can sort of manipulate this approach to make changes to the strategy during runtime. Okay, so the final refactoring will be to move all of this code out of this API class and into a service. So let's start by creating another class here called, let's call it payment service. What we're going to do is develop a Spring Bean using the @service implementation or @service annotation. And the service will return a string as we've been doing before. And we'll just call this method process. And then what we're going to do is take all the code that's in the API class and copy that over. And we'll pass the type in here. And everything else should remain the same. And if I go to my payment API, I no longer need all of this. And I should be able to add the payment processor service by auto wiring it or using dependency injection. So we'll use the payment service. And we'll just simply return payment service dot process, passing in the type. Okay, so this is more of what you would expect to see from a Spring application. And I'm missing. All right, so this is typically what you would see from a Spring-based service, and we expect that this code should be exactly the same as it was before. Okay, and then so our API looks much cleaner now. We're injecting a payment service, and then we're calling process on the service. Okay, so we'll do our final refactoring. We have code in here that kind of resembles what's called the factory pattern. And so, if we ever extend, the types of processors that we create, we would just simply go to one spot and update the code. This code doesn't change, but this can be extended. So we'll implement the factory pattern for this. So we'll start by creating a class called payment processor factory. And that class will return a payment processor based on the type. So we'll have a method called get payment processor, passing in the type. And then we'll go into our service and copy this creation code. And this is now where we're implementing. So the strategy pattern was a behavioral pattern. This is a construction pattern because we're constructing objects. So we'll copy that code in here. And we simply just want to return the payment processor here. All right, so now we're returning a payment processor. This all looks pretty good. And then we'll now need to use that in the service. So we'll go back into our service and we'll remove this code. And because we made that factory include a static method, we can just do something like payment processor factory dot get payment processor and passing in the type. And that's pretty much it. And so we're getting from the factory a specific payment processor type based on the type coming in. And then we're generically calling within our service the methods off of the processor and returning it back to the API, which then prints it out to the browser. So that kind of concludes the implementation of the strategy pattern.